Today we are joined by a special guest, an Iditarod finisher who knows firsthand what it takes to complete the last great race. While she isn't racing this year, her husband is currently on the trail, and we're excited to get her insights into how things are unfolding. With the race in full swing, we'll dive into the latest updates, the challenges mushers are facing, and what makes this year's race unique.
Hello, KattiJo. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
Okay. Today we are going to get some race updates from you, but first, can you give our listeners a little background information about who you are?
Sure. My name is KattiJo Deeter. I ran the Iditarod in 2022 and 2023. And I am married to Jeff Deeter, who's on the trail right now in his 8th Iditarod.
Okay.
Let's start off the current standings. Can you give us an update on the current leaderboard, who is out front, and what are you noticing about the race so far?
At this point, you can't really choose one person who's leading the race because the mushers are just sort of leapfrogging each other as they make different decisions about where to rest. But the current leaders look to be Jesse Holmes, Paige Drobny, and Matt Hall. I would say those three are leading the race.
Okay. We've heard mushers encountered a sandstorm on the trail. Can you tell us more about what happened and how that might impact teams?
I don't think that in the long term that's really going to impact anyone, but I think in the moment it was probably pretty if you're a brave musher it was probably exciting, and if you are maybe not so brave it was maybe a little bit scary. But it was kind of like a blizzard with sand instead of snow. So the mushers just got into one little section of trail that apparently is known to local people to be a very windy spot. So everyone that lives in Tanana knows that this place on the river is really windy, but the mushers didn't know that. And this year, I assume because of the low snow that we've had here in Alaska, the material that was getting blown around was sand instead of snow. So mushers got into that wind and were really just hit with a wall of blowing sand. And it was very disorienting. I talked to Jeff and he said it was very hard for him to see his leaders, and it was almost impossible to see the trail markers. And so there were a few teams that got off the trail. That would be Jesse Holmes, and then Jeff was right behind him and basically was just following his tracks. And because Jesse went off the trail, then Jeff went off the trail, and then Travis Beals also ended up going off the trail later. I think he lost almost an hour of time, just was very disoriented. I know he called his wife and asked her where he was and if she could somehow help him get back on the trail because he didn't know what direction he was supposed to be going. I know that Jeff got some help from Millie Porceld. She happened to come up on that section of trail just a little while after him. And when he saw her headlamp, he was able to mush to her headlamp. And then he told her, he said, hey, this way that I just came from, this was not the right way. So try going that way instead. And when you see a trail marker, if you see a trail marker, turn around and give me a signal, flash your headlamp at me, and I will know that you're on the trail, and then I'll come to you. And so that's what they ended up doing. And that was how Jeff found his way out, was Millie was able to find the trail and then signal to him that she was on the right track. But yeah, really, really confusing, really disorienting in there. Pretty uncomfortable. The mushers got sand in their eyes and their teeth and their hair and their clothes. But some mushers really like that. I know Jeff really enjoys that the river can be really boring. And so I think it was pretty fun.
Alright, so let's. Alright. Let's. Did it bother the dogs at all? actually?
Did it affect the dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I probably got in their mouth and their eyes and their nose also, just like it did with the people. But I think for everyone it was pretty temporary discomfort, and then they were fine.
Okay. All right. Now let's move on to snow conditions. Someone's been saying the snow is different from what mushers trained on this year. Can you elaborate on that a little for us?
Sure. So, do you guys live in a snowy place? Do you have snow where you are?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
Sometimes. Okay, so if you've noticed, or maybe you've noticed this with sand, snow and sand can be very packed. Like if you're walking on a trail or maybe a beach that's getting a lot of pressure from people walking on it or machines driving on it, or if we're talking sand, the waves of the ocean or the lake are pressing on the sand and are making it firm. That's the sort of trails that we have had here in Fairbanks, and a lot of mushers have had throughout Alaska. And that allows you to travel pretty quick, but you can also control your speed very well on a hard packed trail. And now I want you guys to picture snow that has not been tracked on. It's fresh. It just has fallen down. Nobody's walked on it, or maybe one person has walked on it. You try to get in that snow, and it's really hard for you to walk in. Same thing with the sand, right? The sand that's up by the water is really easy to walk on, but maybe the sand on the high side of the beach is like really hard to walk in. You walk in it and you kind of sink down in it. And that's a lot harder for you to move in. Mushers don't usually train in those sorts of conditions because it is hard for the dogs to move. The going is very difficult. Unfortunately, though, with this trail being moved from Willow to Fairbanks, that is the sort of trail that mushers have been on, is a trail that hasn't seen a lot of traffic. It hasn't had a lot of pressure and packing. So the dogs are trying to move through snow that is in some areas very, very soft, like walking in that soft sand. So it's really hard for them to move. Or there are other areas of trail, like in that windstorm, well, that sandstorm where all the snow has been blown away and there's just the ice of the river left underneath. And then the dogs are going really super fast because then they're just running on ice and we can't really slow them down. So normally when mushers are training our dog teams, we like to take them to places where we have a lot of control. We can control the speed. The dogs can move really nicely. That makes sure that the dogs don't get injuries during the season. And the race trail just hasn't been like that. The dogs are either going really fast or they're going really slow, and they're using muscles that they don't normally use during the training season. And so for some teams, like with Jeff, that has led to injuries. That's not true for everybody. I think that it looks like Paige Drobny and Jesse Holmes, their teams seem to be both set up really well for these conditions. I think because of where they live in Alaska, they see more of this while they're training. But for other teams, I think it's been a real challenge. Although it seems like the trail is better now as teams are getting closer to Ruby and going past Ruby. The trail gets more traffic from the local people that live there. And so hopefully we've seen maybe the last of those really challenging conditions, at least for a while.
Okay. One of the mandatory rests mushers must take is the 24-hour rest anywhere along the trail. We noticed both Matthew Failer and your husband Jeff have both taken their 24-hour. Any ideas on why so early in the race?
Yeah, yep. So they just have those sorts of injuries, probably not injuries, more like muscle sorenesses that I was just talking about. Both Matt and Jeff had a lot of dogs that were just sore from using muscles in brand new ways. You guys are, so you maybe don't understand this, but you can ask your teacher all about it. As you get older, if you use a muscle in a brand new way, it can feel sore the next day. So both giving their dogs some time to rest up and feel better, and stretching the dogs and massaging the dogs. If you guys haven't seen it yet, there's a really great video on Iditarod Insider of Jeff massaging and stretching one of the dogs on the team. And he talks about the things that he's looking for. And so definitely your viewers should look at that video as well. Really interesting stuff there.
This year's Iditarod features a longer trail by around 150 miles. How do you think that will impact the race overall?
I don't know. I don't know. I would think that teams should be maybe going slower and taking more rest. We haven't really seen that yet. So I suspect that we will see it later. I think that perhaps teams that have rested well early on will kind of surge ahead, and maybe some of those teams that are up front right now will have to drop back and slow down. But both Matt Hall and Paige Drobny historically have done a very good job of managing their teams and knowing what their teams are capable of. So I'm a little bit nervous seeing those two up front. They might just stay up there all the way to the end. Jesse Holmes is more of a wild card. Jesse has had plenty of races where he's up front for a long time, and then he ends up dropping way, way back. So with him, I don't know. I think anything is possible. But Matt and Paige, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. We see Brenda Mackey has scratched. Any thoughts or ideas of this? On this?
I assume that she probably scratched, maybe because her dogs were also sore, just like what I was talking about with Jeff and Matt. Yes, taking your 24-hour rest at the 200-mile mark is very, very early on in the race. I know Jeff was not excited about that option. I'm sure that Matt Failer was not excited about that. And it's possible that Brenda just felt discouraged and just didn't continue. It's, you kind of, when you're in that position, you have one of two choices, and one choice was to 24 and one choice was to go home. So that would be my guess about what Brenda decided there.
I'm sure you are following your husband closely. How's he doing, and how do you think he is happy with where he is at? Or rather, do you think he is happy?
I think yesterday was a really hard day for him. He had a lot of feelings that he had to work through, and probably had to change his expectations about how this race was going to go for him. But he has had many, many races that have started like this, with some kind of major issue in the beginning, and then he comes back in the second half of the race and looks awesome, and the dogs look awesome. That's really just kind of the musher that he is and the sort of team that we have. So I think yesterday morning, when all these sorenesses started popping, I was pretty bummed. But I think now it's a beautiful day here in the interior of Alaska, and he is probably just enjoying being back on the trail with a team that is hopefully feeling better.
Okay. Our last segment will be your picks. Who do you think will be in the top 5 this year?
I think it's gonna be Paige and Matt Hall and Travis Beals, and I think Jeff Deeter. I think we'll see a big comeback from him. And Mitch Seavey. Can't forget about Mitch Seavey. He's going to do really well this year for sure.
All right. Which musher do you think will take Rookie of the Year?
Oh gosh, I was gonna say Brenda Mackey. Well, no, I guess actually she wouldn't have been eligible because she did attempt Iditarod in 2021, and she scratched that. If you have attempted Iditarod before and didn't finish, you're still not eligible for Rookie of the Year, even though you're called a rookie. So, gosh, let's see what rookie is leading right now. Do you guys know?
No.
He's looking.
Yeah, it's funny. I had been asking myself this question too over the last couple weeks, and I just don't know. I feel like this rookie class is all pretty evenly matched.
There's a lot of people resting in rookie.
Yeah, you know who it might be? Maybe Sam Lalonde. She's running it V's kennel. So that team is going to be very, very strong. So I think in terms of like individual mushers, she has some good experience, and she's got a great group of athletes that she's working with. Dallas does ask his rookie mushers though to be somewhat conservative, so I don't know, maybe he won't be having her go very hard. I think that Dallas also has loaned some dogs to his dad Mitch for this race too, so maybe that would make Sam's team less competitive, but at this point she would be my pick.
Which musher will be the biggest surprise?
I think Jeff Deeter is going to be a huge surprise. He's way in the back right now, but I think he's gonna come back and crush it in the second half. We're all just gonna have to be patient.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
You're welcome, you guys. Those were great questions.
Special thanks to our guest KattiJo Deeter for being on our show this week. If you have any questions, comments, or people you would like to hear on the show, email us at huskytalk1@gmail.com. We would like to also give credit to Hobo Jim for our intro song, the Iditarod Trail song, and our outro song, Reddington's Run.
Here's to Joe and its off he goes, in the land of the midnight sun. They call this race the Iditarod Trail. To me, it's Reddington's Run. In my heart, it's Reddington's Run.